I started to feel that part of that was his pain. He just didn't want to go deep into things that could make him vulnerable.
How old were you when you realized you had to forgive your father?
I think I was about 40. And that's what we all want, because I don't want to be trapped into something that, happened yesterday or 20 years ago. It is a very difficult way to live.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Uli and Uly Show. My name is Ulysses or Uli, and this is my father.
Uli.
Uli. Dad, you excited?
I'm very excited. Doing this with you, since the idea came up, I was just thinking, what a good place to share something, with people in the audience that had a chance to listen to what we're going to have to say during these programs.
We were just discussing prior to starting this episode, what's the purpose of this show? And I already mentioned this to you, but whether this show gets, 1 million views or it gets 2, I'm actually really excited to do this because I think this is going to be a good video series to look back on when I'm 65 or 85 and you've maybe passed away, or my daughters and my granddaughters can see a little bit of you and learn a little bit about you and your experiences. But hopefully there's also some people who are watching when we put this out, whether it's the same day or a year from now, who will be able to get some value from the things that we discussed today.
Let's do it.
All right. So the topic that we want to go over today is forgiving our fathers.
Oops.
All right. We were just talking about why is it important to forgive in the first place. And Dad, actually, before we get into the main topic, could you share maybe 60 seconds of why is forgiveness essential?
Well, it's been proved that there is a change on the structure of the brain when we forgive. And also, it's not an easy thing to do because, that requires vulnerability. Okay, it requires to be aware of things, senses, and that's the benefit. I think is mostly for us, the forgiveness part. It brings inner freedom. And that's what we all want, because I don't want to be trapped into something that, happened yesterday or 20 years ago. It is a very difficult way to live. So forgiveness will be very appropriate. So I'm glad that you start with this topic and forgiving me.
Which we might get into that a little later. But I do want to get into your relationship with your father, which is someone who I have some memories of, but I don't remember him very well. I have, again, just very few memories of my grandpa, your father. So I'm curious, growing up, what kind of man was he? As a little kid, I do have vague memories because we were a large family, number one. Number two, there was some time of accents. I mean, there's no reason for me to judge the reason, but nevertheless, there was an absence. I saw him as a hero. Okay, he had this high stature, to me, being a little kid. And he was very articulated, funny. He was funny with friends and peers. So socially, he did have some of the traits that I want to have. But in the growing part, I didn't have the chance really to connect emotionally. So that was a missing part. Yeah. Again, that's something important for a child and a young person. Nevertheless, there's no reason for pass a judgment because there were a lot of good things too. Some traits that I really kind of pick up from my early years. So I can say that in my memory is, as a child, is somebody that I would like to be with and spend time, which was lack, in those days, due to work and so many other things. So you saw him as a hero, but you said, like you mentioned, emotionally absent. How do you think that affected you growing up?
As a little kids, we don't think much. We don't kind of have this structure of order in regard to our own life. But definitely there was an effect. I mean, no doubt. There were
positive things too, because listening to him, kind of got me, and I put him in this pedestal. So, in someone that I would like to be in certain ways. There's no doubt that there was this like a connection, emotional connection, more than anything. It has some effect. The thing is, I believe that he did the best based on what he knew and based on his own experiences and based on what he understood a relationship. So, of course, I didn't get to the conclusion until later on. So it's not like, I was a teenager and I say, okay, he's not connected. This is what happened. No, it takes some time, to understand this.
And so I guess staying on the topic of how you grew up, and again, this is not a judgment call on anyone. This is not let's talk about how bad grandpa was or anything like that, but more so as a way of trying to, I guess, create some context and also so we can all learn together. What kind of environment in your home do you think, growing up, do you think that your father created by not connecting emotionally?
Well, as I told you, we did not know what was the meaning of that. Mm-hmm. But definitely, our body needs it. Our body needs the connection. Our mind, our brain needs that. And, we look for outlets, definitely, when there's something that's missing. So we're trying to look for outlets. So in the mind of a kid, basically any little thing, it becomes a great thing. So we can invent ourselves things, like outlets are, playing. Our minds are always kind of looking for exploration, creativity. There is, the environment of work together, which my mom, she trying to teach us. It was difficult too because there were 11 siblings, so that was I cannot imagine, how it was for mom, trying to keep everybody stable and not killing each other. Not literally killing each other. But yeah, the lack of connection, it brings a toll into everybody. Because, you look at your mom, the person that you love, and you want your mom to be happy too. And not directly, but indirectly, you start feeling, that there is something missing on the life of the person that is dedicating, her life to assure that all the children are okay. And with a lack of resources and also the absence, in some occasions, basically emotional, I believe that mom also, have this stress that carry. And, in the environment, that stress, it does affect children. I mean, not in the sense that we say, okay, we need this from that. We don't understand. We don't know how to do that. But we can feel, we can sense. So I sensed that, and I was afraid. Okay, I have fears, and of course, not that I live in fears all day long, but because I could get to my outlets and play with my siblings, or maybe do something with friends, that it helps in me and it helps my other siblings too. So yeah, that is something that you carry, because in a way, if you're a child, you want to heal, indirectly, you want to do the healing to the environment. And we're trying to adjust to it, become the protector in some cases, or heroes, okay? Or become the one that is actually trying to speak up, So there's so many ways how, we can really be affected. And yeah, there is no doubt that was a missing piece that we all in our family felt. But again, not that we were crying all day, suffering, because, our brains, they know what to do. No, there is regions of the brain that they do things so we cannot really remember, a lot of time. some of the, little or big challenges or some of the big traumas. So in that way, we don't have to be having this repeated conversation in our mind about what happened X day or X week. So that is something good. But at the same token, these memories are going to arise one day. No?
Mm-hmm. There's kind of two ways I want to take this right now. Let's do this, because I'm curious. So we'll get back to the topic of forgiveness, but I really want to know. So if you can pinpoint anything, how do you think that relationship with your father, that environment that you grew up in with, not having that emotional, connection, do you think that affected your marriage and your own relationship with your children as they were growing up?
Oh yeah, there is no doubt. There are memories, the things that we're missing, we want to really, make it happen in our own marriages. But, we still carry some of the fears that, could be in our subconscious. And even though we try our best to change some of the dynamic, some of these things, really pops, especially fears, from time to time, anger, that we don't know where it's coming from, resentment that we don't know where it's coming from. So that is there, And again, it's not like it's all day long, torture you. And, the thing is through the process, we start discovering things that we did not know that were still there. Because, you say to yourself, okay, I want to make a better life than the life I grew up in. Okay, that's the goal, no? And these are the aspirations. And then you make adjustments and you say, okay, this thing I'm not going to do, this thing I'm going to do, this I will do, that will make it possible to get to that aspiration. But in many cases, you're going to fail, not because you're destined to fail, but it's because these memories associated with those fears, they will emerge. They will emerge. And you may even end up not doing everything that you were planning to do to make your aspirations possible. So, and of course, it's a little debate inside, because we need to discover when this happened, and the discovering part could be a miss, okay? See, because all this brings a little bit of pain. You find out that you still are not, doing the things that you promised to yourself to do to improve the life of those that you love, your children, you're married, and you have kids. And then these heirs, it brings these feelings of guilt, no? And then, our tendency is to find whose fault it is, no? And I spent some time, thinking, okay, so whose fault is? Why did I feel this way? And then I tried to figure out, see if I can go to the past and fix it, okay, in my mind, okay. And of course, you mistakenly, you perhaps, some of the memories, you might use it to kind of point and say, okay, all right, I know that is when I was 10, what daddy did when I was 10, or what he didn't do when I was 12, or the day that I wait, for this, or the day that, my daddy raged or got upset or say the wrong things, or maybe the day that I was traumatized because he said something he shouldn't say to my mom or my siblings. So we really traveled through time in our mind in trying to fix, which is not really a bad thing, no. I mean, it's not a bad thing. We're just trying to figure out, why do I feel now that I'm supposed to be a better father, a better spouse? Why do I feel this way? Why did I fail to do the things that I promised to myself? And in our desire to do the reparations, so maybe we end up thinking that this is like a little machine. I gotta find the screw that was lost 40 years ago, find it and put it back in my brain so it can work well. But it doesn't, no. But that gave us the opportunity. I mean, this is just an amazing process, cognition, a little painful. Okay, it is a little painful. But it gave you the opportunity to now be you, a reflection as your own father. And at the same time, be you a reflection at your own decisions and your own mistakes. Now you have to encounter, okay, here it is, some of the behavior that I observe. Here is some of my own behavior. Okay, here is the consequences. Who am I going to blame? Okay, is it my father? Is it the environment that he produced? Is it my decisions? Or perhaps it's a combination of both. Or maybe it's a great opportunity to really feel and sense my father, putting myself in his shoes. Not an easy thing to do because I don't know a lot. So what it will help me is to explore his life, just like what you're doing now with this program. And I hope the audience too kind of look at this and say, okay, how can I explore the life of someone, okay, that I haven't really lived, because there's a life as another person. I do have information regarding to some of the experience in my mind. But that was the next thing that after struggle for a little bit, I thought I need to explore him, because the information has so limited, okay? And that was the task that I started doing later after struggle with this. Might blame me, I blame him, or he is, or somebody's fault here.
So how did you start doing that then? Because like you said, you have little information. You don't have full context on your father's life.
Yeah.
And none of us have full context on any of our parents' lives. So how did you go about doing that?
Well, for me, it was a little challenging because even a hug, it was something that wasn't very used to be done. So I don't think, Dad didn't want to hug me. I don't think so. I think the hug for him was kind of unusual. So I imagine, the structure of our mind. If I'm not used to touch you, any touch could be like, okay, just from this distance. No. So I start hugging him. I mean, not like a big bear hug, but it started slowly. It felt weird. No, it felt very weird. So, but that was a good beginning. No. So then we start conversations. I start asking things about, his days in school, his friends, and little by little, because he perhaps it was painful for him. I don't know, but it wasn't really open to speak much. But he was cheerful about it. Okay, not that he say, hey, just he did say, hey, this is a boundary you crossing. No, it wasn't like that. It was that we couldn't get in the beginning to the place I want to be. No, because my purpose was to feel him. And of course, this is easy to say than done, because you're also human, and you have your own bias. And if I have been judging my father for quite a bit, so I structured this social distance. So I had to kind of move towards and trying to see him as a human, and to see him as a person, and trying to understand. And that was a good place to start. So he shared quite a few things, about his life, and of course, he wasn't willing to share his vulnerabilities. Okay, and I had no, sometimes we want to judge people and say, okay, this is pride, but you know what? That was my immediate response when he wasn't willing to share vulnerability. But then I thought about it, and I thought, this is not good for me to judge. And then I realized, part of this, it was a reflection on myself. Okay, so when I leave the space, I started to feel that part of that was his pain. He just didn't want to go deep into things that could make him vulnerable, maybe. And then that opened up a little bit of more chance to have more conversations.
I really like how you saw that yeah, we sometimes can think that, oh, they don't want to share this because they're prideful, they just don't want to share with me, or whatever the case may be, whatever comes into our minds. But there are a lot of people who are carrying a lot of pain, and they don't know how to handle it, they don't know how to reconcile it and resolve it. I think it's a very good point that we should be careful not to judge them for it, because we don't know what kind of pain is there.
We all use outlets, strategies. My father was, if I was in the middle of some social environment with him, he'll be the delightful person, fun, he'll make some jokes, make people feel easy, very easy to get along with. And that was like, that one part of that I didn't experience myself, on the context of a family or a relationship. So, not that he wasn't funny. I mean, he could be funny, but it was good to see him in that environment. And I noticed that was some of the outlet he used to avoid, being vulnerable. And he also drank a little bit as a, adult. I mean, he left later on, but that affect also. And when I was a young person, seeing him drinking made me feel safe because he was friendly. Okay, he was very friendly. He was amiable. He was, kind with me and all the siblings. So that's a different story. But we all use different strategies to deal with some of the pain that we carry. Some people will be more aimed to do certain things, maybe service. Some people will be just doing service, which is not bad. It's just a good thing. But they might forget themselves and their own challenges and to deal with, some of the things that we carry.
So going back to your father, so you started to explore him, explore his life, ask him questions, basically get to know him better. So how did that start to improve your relationship with him?
Well, it was a mix. It was like some of the conversations, it was totally opposite to some of the things that I believe and do. And I had to bite my tongue, okay, so I don't, and also stop me from trying to put a wall. So it took a little bit of practice, because, if you are having a conversation on a topic where you actually don't agree, and the first thing you want to do is just run away from there or close your mind so you don't really engage. So a little bit of practice on that. See, from that perspective, so I start thinking, from his perspective, this conversation is probably the most appropriate, and the way how he approaches it is probably the most appropriate to him. So I put on his shoes. Not easy, okay, because, still when it's your father and it's somebody that you have these memories, and there was a lack of something that is supposed to happen, the tendency to judge or put a wall, it could be there. So, so I did actually listen a little bit more. And every time in my mind came this tendency to judge, I say to myself, okay, if I was in his shoes, and then I did start remembering the conversations, the previous, if I was in that school, if I was in this place, if I had this situation, according to what I was learning, perhaps he's trying the best. And it changed completely. So we could have a conversation, a little bit of practice, because sometimes I want to run out of that conversation and just move into something else. No, but yeah, that was the way to do it, to me.
So how old were you when you started to start this process?
My first intent was when I was about 22.
22.
Yeah, that's when I felt, I felt that there was not the contact, the physical contact. Okay, so that's when the hugging came. The hug was really awkward. You hug it, okay. You want to just, do a short hug and do what the typical people do, no? Okay. As I was doing that, I became better and less really it was rejecting less and less. Okay. I didn't feel totally that he was open to have a really warm hug, but he was not rejecting, no. Neither I was mentally rejecting. So that's the first time. Then later on, when I think I was about 30, so then I started having a little bit of conversations, a little bit more. We talk about, things in general. Okay, it wasn't really much of going to his history because he was limited what he was willing to really talk. But it added up. So until when it got to a point where we could actually talk more and walk together, and have long conversation. We could spend an hour or two. But I still didn't feel that connection. See, that's when, there was something there, something that I start thinking maybe I have forgiven myself for something, or maybe I have forgiven him for something. And probably that's when this program today it's all for, I guess.
So then, okay, so you started at 22, started just a little bit of physical touch, a little bit of hugging. Then around 30 is when you start to dive more into getting to know him more with the asking questions. And like you mentioned, you still felt that something was missing. So I guess, can you talk about that? What happened next? So you've been building literally years, at this point, over a decade of building up to this point. So then what did you do when you started to feel like there was that connection missing? What happened next?
You always go back to, okay, I'm a father now, but I'm still not really the things that I wanted to do, in terms of my aspiration with my family. I mean, I had changed many things in regard to, the way how my family was, my father was, and the way I was. It was a total change. But it still was missing. There's something, And how would I know? Because even though it was a little bit of connection there, it still felt like I was going back to find the place in time where whatever screw was lost that I could find. And it was always brought me back into childhood, into my younger years. So, and I thought to myself, okay, now I'm gathering now the information and I understand a little better and less judgmental, but I haven't forgiven him. I felt that. Yeah, I couldn't understand why did I feel that when, he's getting older and I supposedly getting a little wiser. Supposedly understand a little bit more. So why I was stuck in there. So it took me a little bit of time till I realized, it's hard to forgive myself. And I didn't know why it was hard to forgive myself. And then I felt, one day when I was talking to the phone, how I want to be sure, not really be connected myself. So I was replicating, the way how he was actually connecting with us. And I sat down and thought about it and felt about what are the things I need to forgive myself. And it always was going back to him in my childhood. So even though I can tell you, not that I didn't love my mom, but he was my favorite, as a kid. Mama was, she was good, she was protector, she was helping us. the best she could. But to me, he was my hero. I want to emulate him, as a kid. And maybe I was upset, when I found out things that was happening in his life. And then when I was a little bit more aware as a young man, that actually there was an absence there. There was abandonment, emotional abandonment. So I thought that maybe deep inside, okay, I had this feeling that I need to let it go.
And so how old were you when you realized you had to forgive your father?
I think I was about 40. I was 40. That's when I felt, I need to really look a little bit more closer to my approach. So I have some of the information. So I called to some of my siblings, because my father had another family previous to ours. So I talked to some of my siblings and asked more questions about that. I was able to, before that, I was able to talk to one of my uncles who was a very good friend to my dad, his brother, and get a little bit of information. So that kind of helped me to look at him a little closer. So I turned my observation more into a kindness observation. So, and then of course, I traveled through time, in my mind, and I started doing some exercise. I started seeing myself as an adult, approaching him as another adult, young adult, and conversing with him. So that's pretty much how you start looking more into, let things go. But kindness, has to play a role in that.
So then when you realize you need to let this go, forgive your father, it sounds like it was still a process that took some time. Is that correct? Yeah,
it was. It was a process. I now have a little interesting practice that I just love. At least 3 or 4 times a week, because I have a routine in the morning. I choose few people I'm grateful for. And sometimes it's my wife, sometimes it's you, sometimes it's a friend, or somebody that, in a way, came to rescue my life or done something for me. And I, at least 2 or 3 times a week, I bring his image. And it's just a fun practice, because he passed away, but I can see him. And I remember, his gestures, some of the funny things he will say, or even his countenance, or the things that I had learned from him. And I just send a virtual gratitude to him. So it's a short practice, but it's really powerful. I never get tired of that.
So he passed away, was it in 2011 or 2012?
2011. Yeah.
2011. And how would you say your relationship was with him when he passed?
Unfortunately, his mind started really being affected. So for a few years, he suffered, a little bit with memories. And there was not really a chance to have conversations like in the past. Okay, we have my father still. He has a lot of his own challenges. So he stayed with us for a little bit in California with my mom. And he got a misunderstanding. I think it was because maybe at that point his memory would start decaying. So he wants to, move out of the house and go back to our country. So after that, his memory got decayed. But I had that impression that I had to also, kind of reorganize, because we didn't know he started getting some problems with memory losses. So the reason why he acted, a little different than usual during the time. So I was a little bit taken from that because I wasn't used to not seeing him, his brain working well. He always was very articulate, and at that point, probably was the beginning of some mental, dysfunction that started, triggering him. So that I didn't have a chance immediately to clear it, and we didn't know that he was started being affected. So I had this, strong emotions that made me feel like uneasy, for the behavior that took place then. So, that kind of really made me feel sad, because I really want to keep a close relationship. And yeah, it wasn't very close, the relationship then. And unfortunately, the conversation wasn't anymore to where we could discuss things and kind of patch things up.
That actually is something I didn't know. And, I think there are a lot of people who have lost a parent, father, mother, maybe grandparent, and maybe those last few years weren't the best for whatever reason, whether it was memory loss or there's misunderstandings. So, do you feel like you've been able to, even though he's not here, even though he's passed away already, do you feel like you've been able to improve your relationship with him since his passing?
I think so. When I knew his passing, it was a sad day because, I wasn't able to really have that conversation we had before, and I was also resenting with myself, upset with myself. Not with him anymore. It was mostly a reflection of my own feelings. Because, we got the memories of our experiences, we got our mistakes, and there is anything in between. So now, reconciling that, it takes a little bit of work. And, to me, it was to understanding that there was a decay on his memories that affect his behavior. And it wasn't nothing personal. So, but that takes a little bit of observing, compassion. It takes a lot of more kindness. And I think my relationship with him is good. I had conversation with him in my mind, and of course, I got all the memories of the history of our life. And I think if he and I will be at the same age, we'll probably be the best friends. I still will respect him and, his beliefs. I still will, laugh and have fun with him.
Just to, first of all, I love hearing that. But I guess just to kind of summarize everything you've been saying. So you began to improve your relationship with your father first when you just started a little bit of interaction. You said a little bit of hugs. It felt awkward at first, but starting off there, just little by little, and then going into getting to know him better, getting to understand his life better, and then going into the actual forgiveness part. I really appreciate that you shared how, there was misunderstanding later, even after you've gone through this process, because that can happen. You can forgive your father, your daughter, whoever it might be, but life still happens. Misunderstandings can still happen, even when you've forgiven someone, even when you've gone through this process. How did you feel after going through this process of forgiveness, of understanding I guess, let me take a step back real quick. I guess, what is the difference in how you feel about your father compared to 40 years ago to today?
Very interesting, because 40 years later, you accumulate so much experience. And of course, it's a lot of, everybody is going through that. There's a lot of wisdom in everybody because experience helps us and teaches. Unfortunately, many times we don't go to our wise mind when we're going through experiences. And normally the reason that is when there's stress, or there's anxiety, or depression, it is hard to go to the wise mind. So now 40 years later, I look back and I see a man that wanted to do the best he can based on his experience. A man that I want to be a friend with, that I will, at any time, will make a trip with and have fun and enjoy and have a conversation and laugh. I think the relationship it's a lot better. No. Even though, these, there's few other things that I would do that I didn't know how to do when I was younger. No. I will be more assertive with them, and so we can have these protective boundaries that help us to grow together. The respecting part has never been a problem since I started kind of working on this. But he also needed my help then. So being assertive in the way I thought on the things that I probably need to be assertive, it would be a great help, to him. But I was afraid too. I was afraid to tell him, hey, Dad, that is not acceptable. I love you, but please don't do that. Okay. Maybe it was fears because, he would probably run from me or maybe didn't want to see me anymore. So that was the fears. Okay. And I didn't want that because inside me there is this child that wants to connect and feel safe and protected. And the memories that are there, who can do that better than a father? So I don't want that person to go away. So that's why sometimes we feel afraid to speak, but not because we don't want to, it's because we don't know how to do it. How to do both, no. And maintain the protector and the person that produces safety next to you while you are telling the things that you don't agree with. So that requires a little bit of skills. And I didn't have the skills to do it then. I didn't scream or yell. I didn't use a strategy. So what I did is I don't want to break any eggshell. So I just, let go. But the let go is not part of the healing either. So I will say that I really, at this point, the relationship is better because I understand him. I put myself in his shoes, and I also would, with kindness and respect, at the right moment, when it's appropriate, would probably, if I have an experience with him in something we disagree, I probably with experience in some of the wise mind that I can use, I could probably portray what I think, what I feel, and why some things probably are not for the best for a relationship without hurting, or making him run away from me, or me running away from him.
So in addition to everything you just said, is there for anyone else who's listening to this who knows that they need to forgive someone, is there any other advice or counsel you would give to someone who's looking to forgive another person?
Well, forgive brings healings and inner peace, as we say in the beginning. And there are a few people who have to forgive. And this is very important. Number one is your parents. Start with your father. No. Because you mentioned we're human, we make mistakes. We try to kind of reconcile things that are related to some memories of the past. We're trying to reconcile our own mistakes, our own transgressions. No. Plus, we we have misperception of things. And we might say the wrong things, we might do wrong things, we might not do things that we're supposed to do. So here's a human, and everybody does that. No, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the son of some absolutely saint out there, still as a human, that's going to make mistakes. We need to really comprehend that. And it has to internalize this. No, of course, as a kid, we put it on a pedestal to our parents. Okay, I mean, why? Yeah, I mean, they are the protectors, and they show up. I mean, it doesn't matter. Most parents will show up. Okay, they may not show up all the time, but they will show up. Especially when we're little. So that dynamic structure of the brain is just, I got a protector there. So forgiveness, because this man who protect you and give you safety is going to make woes. Okay, it's going to create ruptures. Okay, and maybe it doesn't know how to repair the ruptures. Maybe it doesn't, or maybe it does know, and doesn't use that, or maybe use it only once in a while, but it's a human. So now here you have to live with another 8 billion people on Earth, and maybe deal with a couple hundred people through your life, or maybe 500 people that. So forgive your parents. Start with your father, and of course your mom, and then forgive the person that you love or you have loved in the past. If you have another spouse, you need to forgive the person. If you have one spouse, that spouse will make mistakes. Okay? Even the best spouse does. Okay? Intentionally, unintentionally, unconscious, conscious, it doesn't matter. No, misperception. So there is abandonment we do. Everybody does it. Spouses do it. So we have to forgive, because if you don't, you're going to carry something that will hurt you. Forgive yourself. Because my goodness, how many mistakes we make, and we're so self-critical. And of course, the mind does the work to remind us, hey, so we don't do it again. But we kind of twist that and kind of use that to amplify the voice and use a microphone, repeating, making this self-critic, kind of expand the truth from what really is. And the purpose of just helping us turns into some nightmare of anxiety and depression, of our flaws. So we need to learn to forgive ourselves, because we're going to make mistakes too. And forgive others. Others is everybody. Your neighbor, your friend, co-worker. The forgiveness is some things that are difficult to forgive. So we even have to forgive our own pets. They do stuff. No. Yeah, they eat your food without your permission. They do chew up your shoes. Okay. But those are the easy ones to forgive. No. When a pet doesn't make a mistake, so start there, start with what's easy. There are some challenges that you've gone through, or mistakes made by others, that probably it creates a little bit more pain and anguish. And even those we have to forgive. No, it's hard, but it's a necessary thing if we want mental and physical health. Start with your father. So thank you for forgiving.
And I just also want to point out that when it comes to forgiveness, that does not mean that we condone someone's behavior. That doesn't mean that we are saying, "Oh yeah, you punched me, good for you." It doesn't mean that we're condoning their actions, especially when it's something much more damaging. But like you mentioned earlier, forgiving is about having that internal healing, so that you can be able to move on with your life, so that you can have that peace. It's not about necessarily what the other person did, but rather about your own internal healing.
And forgiveness, it does requires, in many cases, depending on the transgression, okay, the situation, requires some boundaries. No, there's some people we have to forgive, but the boundary is, hey, I don't want you to come here anymore. Because at this point, your behavior is such that is creating some damage to the people. So, and if that's the case, that's the case. So these boundaries are not placed with the purpose of keeping you away from me. No, the boundaries are with the purpose of letting you think as your behavior. You know, we do that with kids. Okay, son, you know, go and think about it. If we don't place those boundaries, we're never gonna let the person, you know, be on their own mind and think and reflect on their behaviors. But if we are not placing those boundaries, and I go and say, hey, I forgive you, just come in. No, you know, here, do whatever you want. No, because if I do that, I don't give you a chance to help you. Because when it's a mistake, if I make a mistake, you know, my wife is good at doing that. Your mom is very good at it. No, she actually, you know, doesn't abandon me, but she say very clearly, you know, I need a space. Come to me when you can tell me why you want an apology. You want to apologize. So, and I go like, well, it's clear. I just did it wrong. Sorry. And then that's not what she wants. So, but she actually wants me to reflect. I don't like that in the beginning because I say, okay, I want to fix this now. I don't want you to be my enemy. You know, let's just solve it so we can clear this out and become friends like a minute ago. So, and many times that's not what we need. Many times is I gotta be here with me in a room so I can reflect. So the reflection will help me, give me the space to think, okay, what are the consequences? You know, do I want this? So this action of forgiveness, it has to go aligning with assertiveness and the boundaries that have to be placed according to, you know, the type of transgression that there is.
Thank you so much for watching. Now, for time's sake, we are going to cut the episode there. On the next episode, we will get into my story of forgiving my father. But until then, make sure to subscribe. And the video probably will be linked up somewhere up here. Maybe here, somewhere on the screen. But again, thank you so much for watching and have a fantastic day.